Welcome to this new and important video. Our journey through the historical Holocaust continues and resumes here in Poland.
It's going to be a very demanding and challenging day, which actually started at dawn this morning, very early indeed, because we obtained special permits that allowed us to visit privately and to fly over Auschwitz. So we arrived extremely early, specifically to film with the drone, and now to have a private, exclusive visit.
We were born in the 1980s in a part of the world that was, all things considered, happy, where things were going well. We don't know what war is. We've only heard about it from our grandparents, from the news. So being here today is truly, genuinely very moving.
It's really very especially important. For us, war is something to study in history books, and so here we come to truly understand what it really was. All of a sudden, people like us, friends, relatives, acquaintances, were discriminated against, stripped of all rights and deported to concentration camps like this one.
Today we will show you some exclusive and rarely seen footage in agreement with the Auschwitz-Birkenau State Museum, which has kindly granted us this private and very special visit. With all the filming we are going to do, we will also be entering some of the blocks that are not normally open to visitors, but will be exclusive to the visit we are making today. This is because these particular blocks have remained in their original preserved state since the time of the camp's operation. Before we begin, we'd like to kindly ask you for a simple favor. In 2022, we received over 4 million views right here on the channel, but only about 14,000 of you actually subscribed. Please subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on future content about the Holocaust and much more.
The official date of the first persecution of Jews is the night between November 9th and 10th, 1938, better known as Kristallnacht, during which the Nazis destroyed several synagogues and the windows of shops owned by Jewish citizens. Symbols, community structures, and the means of livelihood of the Jewish community were targeted. From this moment on, hundreds of Jewish people desperately tried to leave Germany, and this particular episode marked the significant transition to a completely new phase of destruction, in which genocide would ultimately become the central and defining objective of Nazi anti-Semitism.
Between 1933 and 1945, Nazi Germany and its allies systematically constructed about 44,000 concentration camps and other facilities intended to imprison or isolate Jews and other groups of people deemed undesirable, such as political opponents, Roma and homosexuals. These camps were used for a variety of different purposes, including forced labor, detention, and the systematic mass extermination of prisoners. The very first concentration camp was officially opened in March 1933 at Dachau, located near the city of Munich in Germany.
Located in the part of Poland occupied by the Germans, about an hour from Krakow. We are near the Polish town of Auschwitz. Auschwitz consisted of 3 camps, one of which served as an extermination center. The 3 camps were opened over the course of about 2 years, between 1940 and 1942. Starting in 1942, it became the largest of the various concentration camp complexes and played a fundamental role in carrying out the so-called final solution planned by the Nazis to kill the Jews of Europe.
To visit Auschwitz, we selected April 25th, a significant holiday for us Italians, the day of liberation from Nazi fascism. We chose this very day because it is important once again to remember. Because as Primo Levi wrote, it happened so it can happen again.
Almost 80 years have now passed since what would later become known as the Day of Remembrance, that is, the day when the concentration camps of Auschwitz and Birkenau were officially liberated, on January 27th, 1945.
It all started here, from these tracks. After endless journeys, crammed like animals into the train cars, 80 people per wagon, the deportees arrived, most of them Jews, guilty of nothing but being born Jewish.
As soon as they arrived, the doors were thrown open, and beyond the SS, they found themselves facing the kapos. The kapos were prisoners like them, chosen to be responsible for maintaining discipline, and they often used very violent, coercive methods. Upon arrival, the prisoners had to undergo a selection process by the SS and the SS doctors. Here we see the selection process. Men were separated to one side, and women and children to the other. The SS and the doctors decided who was fit for work and who was not. Those deemed unfit were sent directly to the gas chamber. Men were separated from women, and in an instant, love, friendships, and families were torn apart, making people even more vulnerable. Then they were separated into two more groups, one larger and one smaller. The larger group included the exhausted, the sick, pregnant women, and those unfit for labor, and children, people who were immediately destined for death. In the smaller group, on the other hand, were those deemed fit for forced labor. This is a photograph of deportees from Longoria, enorme. And there are women and young children walking toward the gas chambers.
Those who could work were sent to a specific part of the building and made to undress. Clothes and personal belongings were piled up outside. Here they were subjected to further inspection. Anyone with visible scars or with any kind of physical or aesthetic defect was sent back and placed together with the larger group, the one destined for immediate death.
The survivors did not know what their fate would be, nor did they know what would happen to the people, their loved ones, who had been sent to the larger group. They did not know that those columns of smoke and that acrid smell they sensed were the souls of their loved ones. In
this room, however, we can see the personal belongings of the people who passed through here at Auschwitz and Birkenau. In particular, we find over 80,000 pairs of shoes, and even in this sense, associating each individual shoe with each person gives us a deeper sense of the scale of what happened. Right here behind me, we also find the suitcases of those who were brought here.
It is thought that this collection of objects represents hope for the people because they believed they were heading toward a new life, so they brought with them essential belongings for their daily lives. Instead, they were only being led to death.
Now we have just exited Block 4. In the room with the hair, we were unfortunately not able to film, even though we had permits, because it is simply not allowed. I truly believe that in any case, no single image could ever truly and fully convey the deep emotional impact and significance of that room. As soon as you enter, in fact, you immediately see a huge, overwhelming mountain of hair that is really indescribable, that's it. What is truly striking from an emotional point of view is that here we see a pile of glasses, a pile of hair. But if we were to give a name, a face, to each and every pair of glasses, to each and every lock of hair, then we would truly begin to grasp the real meaning, the full scale of what happened. This area behind us, on the other hand, is the square where every single day the deportees were lined up in strict formation and carefully counted, where the daily roll call was held without exception.
This is Block 10. Here, doctors conducted so-called pseudoscientific experiments on twins, pairs of twins, both Roma and Jewish, on people with dwarfism, and they also carried out experiments involving castration or sterilization. Young women lived upstairs in this building, they stayed above the main floor, and downstairs, experiments were carried out specifically on these women. This is another process of dehumanization because doctors are supposed to help.
These here were the prison buildings, and this structure behind is the wall where executions were carried out.
This is the wall of death where numerous executions took place. We are in Block 11. Block 11 is where it all began. The experiments with Zyklon. The execution wall, also known as the Black Wall, was a wall made of wood and sand located at the end of a courtyard that separated Block 10 and Block 11 of Auschwitz I.
In this somber room, prisoners waited for death. On the walls we can also see their final messages, because then in the corridor just outside here they were in fact hanged, or in some cases outside at the wall, shot. Now, we've exited Block 11. Downstairs it wasn't possible to film everywhere. There were the prisoners' rooms and above all the torture chambers which were used for various forms of punishment and interrogation. But now at this moment we're heading to Block 2, for which we've obtained special permission to film. This particular block isn't open to regular visitors, so we'll get to see in detail exactly how a block has been preserved from the year 1945, at the end of the Second World War, all the way to today. We are now in block 2, and here you can sense in a completely different way what happened, and in any case, the story these walls have to tell. Even just the smell of the wood here is entirely different, as are the walls, which you can see are very damaged, very worn. In this block, up to 1,000 people lived at the same time, with only 22 bathrooms, which we will see as we go further. Here in these rooms, as I mentioned before, were the 22 bathrooms that I talked about earlier, while over here in this area were actually the sinks. And
inside we can see 3 different drawings in total. One of them we don't know if it was actually authorized, while the other 2 are clearly propaganda drawings.
Now we are going up to the upper floor. This floor was built by the prisoners themselves. And unlike downstairs, on the lower floor, here we have a single room with all these beds where the prisoners slept.
Here we find 3-tiered bunk beds, which were often quite cramped, but sometimes 2 people would sleep in each bed.
Now we are heading to the crematorium of Auschwitz-Birkenau. This crematorium was composed of both a gas chamber and a cremation oven. Here we can see what was in fact the very first extermination site that was established here at Auschwitz. The crematorium at Auschwitz, in fact, at the first camp known as Auschwitz-Birkenau, was not sufficient for the Nazis' intended purposes. It did not meet the expectations of the Nazi regime, as it could only kill about 800 people per day, which was far below what the Nazis required for their plans. The crematorium employed. It took more than 2 days to take care of the disposal of all the remains of the people, to burn them and turn them into ashes, and this was considered absolutely unacceptable, especially considering the large number of deportees who were arriving here from all over Europe. Here we can see how everything was carefully organized, functioning just like a real factory.
On the left were the changing rooms, where people were required to undress, and they left all of their belongings there, thinking they were simply going to take a shower, and that they would be able to retrieve their possessions afterwards. Then they would move on to the gas chambers. In fact, the gas chambers had what looked like showers above them, and they were all underground so that the agonizing screams of the people could not be heard.
These here were the canisters that contained Zyklon B, which was actually used in the showers to kill people. In fact, Zyklon B, when it came into contact with heat, would release cyanide gas.
The main camp, Auschwitz I, was the first to be built, and construction began in May 1940 in a barracks abandoned by the Polish artillery, located in the suburbs of the city of Oswiecim. In order to expand the camp's boundaries, the SS continued to increase the number of prisoners assigned to forced labor. Like most concentration camps, Auschwitz was created for three purposes:
to imprison indefinitely the real or presumed enemies of the Nazi regime, to have a continuous supply of labor to be used for forced work in enterprises, mostly construction companies owned by the SS,
to physically eliminate small groups within the population, whose deaths were considered essential by the SS. It is estimated that the SS and police forces deported at least 1,300,000 people to the Auschwitz complex between 1940 and 1945.
Of these, the camp authorities killed 1,100,000. In total, at least 1 million Jews were murdered here at Auschwitz. Among the victims were about 74,000 Poles, 21,000 Roma, 15,000 Soviet prisoners of war, and 10 to 15,000 citizens of other countries. After this morning's visit for the drone flights, we have now returned once again to Auschwitz-Birkenau. Here, they were able to systematically kill many more people per day, approximately 7,000 to 8,000 people daily, because even larger crematoria were built here.